Every week, there is a new headline. AI is taking your job. AI is smarter than you. AI will replace doctors, lawyers, writers, coders, and artists. Maybe everyone, and maybe by next Tuesday. Podcasts are devoted to it. Entire careers have been built around being anxious about it. You cannot open a browser, scroll a feed, or sit through a work meeting in 2026 without someone asking, "Are you keeping up with AI?" And then there is this group of people. They hear all of it. They nod when required. They are not uninformed. But somewhere underneath the noise, they feel nothing. No panic, no frantic upskilling, no doom, just a quiet, persistent indifference that they themselves cannot fully explain, and that everyone around them seems to find deeply suspicious. And here is what is fascinating. Psychology is not looking at this group as the ones falling behind. It is starting to look at them as the ones who might be paying attention in a way that everyone else is too distracted to notice. You have been in the conversation. Someone says, "Have you tried the new AI tool?" And the room lights up. People are comparing outputs, listing use cases, and debating which model is best. And you are sitting there thinking, "I just want to think through my own problems." Not because you are scared, not because you do not understand it, but because something in you has quietly decided that outsourcing your thinking feels less like an upgrade and more like a slow trade you were not sure you wanted to make. Maybe you have wondered if something is wrong with you for not caring more. Maybe you have been called resistant to change. Maybe you have nodded along in meetings while mentally filing the whole conversation under, "This is not my emergency." Here is what nobody tells you. That instinct you have been second guessing, it has a name, and it has some very solid science behind it. The panic around AI did not appear from nowhere. It was manufactured at scale. In 2025, the Gartner Hype Cycle, an annual tracking of where technologies sit on the curve between inflated expectation and actual usefulness, placed generative AI squarely in what analysts call the trough of disillusionment. The headline promises had not delivered. McKinsey reported that 74% of enterprises that adopted AI still struggled to scale it beyond small pilots. Only 4% achieved any meaningful return on investment. An MIT Technology Review noted publicly that most so-called AI agents were, in their words, closer to glorified task runners than autonomous operators. Think about that for a second. The loudest technological revolution in decades, and the majority of organizations using it could not actually make it work at scale. This is not an argument against AI. It is context. Because the gap between the noise and the reality is enormous, and some people, almost instinctively, have always been better at hearing that gap than others. Now, here is what is actually happening inside the brain of someone who does not feel the AI panic. A 2026 study published in a Sage journal tracked 28,000 adults and found a striking pattern. Long-term AI use was associated with increased mental exhaustion, attention strain, and information overload. But the most significant finding was not about efficiency, it was about self-trust. The research found that prolonged reliance on AI for decision-making was negatively associated with self-assurance in one's own judgment, with a correlation of minus 0.36. In plain terms, the more people used AI to think for them, the less confident they became in their own thinking. And this is where it gets really interesting. The people who remained indifferent to AI adoption were not exhibiting a lack of curiosity. They were, whether consciously or not, protecting something specific, what psychologists call cognitive autonomy. This is the capacity to form your own judgments, trust your own reasoning, and maintain your own sense of agency over how you think. A 2025 study across 666 participants found a significant negative correlation between frequent AI tool usage and critical thinking abilities. Younger participants who adopted AI tools most heavily showed the lowest critical thinking scores. Older participants who used AI tools the least showed the highest. This pattern is consistent with what researchers call cognitive offloading, the process where the brain gradually stops doing the work it used to do because it no longer has to. The brain is, above almost everything else, an efficiency machine. It does not maintain skills it is not using. And people who sensed, without being able to name it, that something in them might quietly erode with over-reliance, were picking up on a real neurological risk. But here's the thing nobody talks about. This creates a social paradox. In 2026, not caring about AI makes you look like you are falling behind. The entire cultural conversation has been framed as adopt or become obsolete. A June 2025 Pew Research survey found that half of all US adults feel more concerned than excited about AI's role in daily life. Yet, the dominant social script remains. You need to be using this, which means that 50% of the population is quietly uncomfortable in a world that is treating their discomfort as a personal failure rather than a reasonable response. The psychological cost of this is not trivial. Research published in Frontiers in Psychology in early 2026 found that even people with significant AI experience reported intensified existential concerns, not about losing their job, but about losing themselves, their sense of identity, their relationship to their own competence. Researchers describe this as a paradoxical relationship. The more fluent you become with AI, the more unsettled some people feel about where their mind ends and the tool begins. The person who does not feel that panic is not ignorant of the stakes. They may be, quietly, more aware of them than anyone. And now, here is the part that explains everything. What the mainstream calls resistance, that flat, unruffled quality of not being swept up by the AI hysteria, has a different name in personality psychology. Researchers studying what is sometimes called need for cognition have found that certain people have a deep intrinsic motivation to engage their own mind in complex problems. And they do not just prefer to think independently, they need it. The act of reasoning through something, of arriving at their own conclusion through their own process, is not a means to an end for them. It is the point. These are people for whom the friction of thinking is not a bug. It is the feature. And when a tool promises to remove that friction entirely, they feel not relief, but a vague sense of loss that they often struggle to articulate. So, let's call this what it actually is. Your indifference to AI is not tech phobia, it is not stubbornness, it is not a failure to keep up with the times, it is your cognitive self-preservation instinct, running exactly as designed. You have spent years building a mind, developing a particular way of reading a problem, turning it over, and arriving at a conclusion that is yours. That process, the friction, the uncertainty, the slow work of actually thinking, is not inefficiency. It is the mechanism by which you trust yourself. It is how you know that your judgment belongs to you. The AI panic promises liberation from that friction, and the research is now suggesting, clearly and without ambiguity, that for many people, what they actually got was a slow erosion of confidence in their own thinking. A tool designed to make you more capable, that made some people feel less certain of their own mind. Your indifference was not passivity, it was your brain protecting something it knew was worth protecting. In a world that has decided the highest intelligence is the one that best delegates its thinking, the people who still insist on doing the work themselves are not behind. They are holding the line. They are the ones who understand, on some level, that a mind you use is worth more than a mind you outsource. Your quiet refusal to be impressed is not a limitation. It is a kind of loyalty to your own intelligence on your own terms. The noise is not going anywhere. New models, new capabilities, new reasons to panic about falling behind. The cycle will continue, because cycles like this always do. But your ability to sit in the middle of all of it and feel nothing is not a gap in your character. It is a signal. Your nervous system recognizing that not every revolution requires your participation to be real. That some things are worth building slowly, by hand, in your own mind, at your own pace. Not every tool that promises to make you more deserves access to how you think. If this felt like permission to keep being exactly who you already are, subscribe to The Quiet Healing. We explore the psychology behind the traits most people are too busy performing to examine. And if you have ever been called resistant to change, you might find our video on the psychology of people who do not follow trends even more familiar, because the pattern underneath it is the same one you have been living all along. Your indifference is not a flaw. It never was. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated on all my future uploads.